Loved your video the other day about Elton John. I thought it was really enlightening. I especially liked you talking about musicology's role in reading between the lines. I think human communication can often be an opaque thing, and I think musicology's attempt to construct meaning from an argument like that is really useful in a world where things like that don't always necessarily happen. I think also it's an interesting case for human communication in general. Interestingly enough, in my mind, when you were giving your video, I kind of juxtaposed it to the idea of legal jargon. In the case of Elton John, he was trying to say something without actually saying it. Whereas someone like a lawyer, and I am not a lawyer, let's get that straight first, has to say things in very, sometimes overly specific terms. I've run into this a couple times, particularly in my time as a resident advisor, where we have to make documents that are legal, and we're instructed on how to do so in some sort of legal jargon. But I often think it's interesting because that pulls a perpendicular between artists and industry, which is interesting because music is an industry. So I think it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall when Elton John was telling his producers and management about this, and see the conversation they might have had and how they faced it in a business sense versus how Elton John pitched it as an artistic work. Ideas like this also beg a question about who the intended audience for that message was. If Elton John had intended that for an audience of men similar to himself, gay men, it would make sense that some of us didn't understand the message until he came out publicly in more certain terms. So it's also an interesting case study in communication and how selecting your words and what you say influences who will understand you in the end.
And selective audiencing like that is a tradition as old as time. The oldest example I can think of is the Aeneid, which, don't at me, I think is one of the greatest political commentaries of all time. But in some cases, it is evidence that you might be part of a bigger issue which these people don't feel comfortable talking about with you. And you don't necessarily have to know about an issue to help someone through it. Sometimes just being kind is enough. And maybe this one lesson from music can teach us is that even if you're not the intended audience for a message, even if it's not for you, be kind, be helpful, because you may never know what people are going through personally. I'll see you tomorrow, Nick.